to the Reasonable Southerner podcast. The South isn't all magnolias in the moonlight, but neither is it all racism and violence. We are just like you. My name is Frances Coleman. I share my insights about my life and yours. I remember the first time I met Edwin Edwards. He was the governor of Louisiana, and I was a young reporter at a newspaper in the central region of the state. Before he spoke, you could tell where Edwards was in the room just by the buzz of excited conversation. When he looked at you, you were immediately engaged and felt like he was talking to you. His eyes were as blue as I had heard they were, and his manner was as charming as I had heard it was. Coming out of the auditorium where he had just spoken to a group, Edwards listened closely as I asked a question about whatever controversy he was embroiled in at the moment. This was sometime in 1977. As he answered my question, I took quick and careful notes and silently congratulated myself for having caught him as he was leaving. But when I got back to the newsroom and sat down to write my story, I realized what other reporters before me already knew and what reporters who came after me would eventually realize. One of Edwards' many well-honed political skills was his ability to answer journalists' questions without actually saying anything significant. The 93-year-old former governor died July 12th of respiratory failure. Married 3 times, he was the father of 5 children, the youngest of whom was 7 when he passed. He accomplished many significant things while in office, including hiring historic numbers of women and minorities, enacting constitutional reform, and changing the way the state taxed the oil and gas industry. His accomplishments, however, were overshadowed by his unrepentant womanizing, extravagant spending, gambling junkets, and corruption. And yet, somehow, some way, despite 10 years in federal prison for accepting bribes, he remained a mesmerizing political figure until the day he died. During his time in office, the skillful and politically savvy press corps in Louisiana's capital of Baton Rouge knew full well what Edwin was up to. When he was referred to as the Silver Fox, the press corps called him the Silver Zipper. They made T-shirts with his image and would have to admit to a man and woman that they were charmed by him. It's a testament to several things, none of which reflects particularly well on human nature. In the same way, some Americans will remain in former President Donald Trump's thrall until the day he too crosses the bar. Many Louisianians were captivated by Edwards' charm, by the way he thumbed his nose at investigators and prosecutors, by his refusal to apologize for anything, and by his ability to convince ordinary voters that he represented the little guy. Sure, Trump's crude diatribes and outrageous statements can't hold a candle to the smooth, slick, and likable demeanor Edwards always displayed. Not to put too fine a point on it, but Edwards exploited, and Trump exploits, people's gullibility and their willingness to be distracted and amused by politicians' exploits and calculatedly outrageous utterances. Edwards' famous zingers include, "The only way I can lose this election is if I'm caught in bed with either a dead girl or a live boy." He won. And, regarding his opponent in the governor's race, David Treen is so slow it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. He won that election too. There was nothing subtle about Edwards' reputation. When former Ku Klux Klansman David Duke ran for governor against him, bumper stickers popped up all over the state. "Vote for the crook. It's important." Politically, he seemed bulletproof. In the same vein, Donald Trump may be most famous or infamous for his brash declaration that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and not lose any voters. With no experience or track record in politics, he was elected president of the world's most powerful country 10 months later. We'll have to see if the man dubbed Cheeto Head for his fluorescent hair dye has the staying power possessed by the man called Silver Fox for his gray mane. People just don't care how bad some politicians are if that particular politician can strike the right chord in them. This is nothing new. Over the years, voters routinely had let themselves be smitten by politicians who were more intent on serving themselves than the people who put them in office. Many years ago in Alabama, as James Big Jim Folsom was running for office again, he brushed aside allegations of corruption by saying, "I plead guilty to stealing. That crowd I got it from, you had to steal it to get it. I stole for you, and you, and you." Folsom lost that election, but it was less because of that assertion and more because of a TV appearance in which he appeared to be very drunk. Otherwise, "I stole for you, and you, and you," might well have taken him back to the governor's mansion. Voters can be that gullible and that willingly, unashamedly blind. More than 30 years ago, an Edwards biographer told the story of attending a religious revival where Edwards was greeted with cheers and applause. According to the New York Times, author John McGinnis asked the preacher afterward, "How can pious people support a man who is known to gamble, chase women, and constantly face investigation for corruption?"
And the preacher replied, "Well, he don't drink or smoke." In the same story, the Times also quoted a woman who had this to say about Edwards after he was released from federal prison in 2011. "We all knew he was going to steal, but he told us he was going to do it." Now I realize what I should have asked Edwin Edwards that long ago day when I snagged a quick interview with him. "So stealing is okay, and so are gambling, womanizing, corruption, and putting oneself ahead of what's best for the people you're supposed to serve, as long as you do it all with great panache?" And with his blue eyes twinkling, he would have smiled his charming smile and answered my question in a way that appeared to make sense while not actually saying anything. The fact that I was charmed by him as a 24-year-old reporter and would still find him charming as a 60-something grandmother does not bother me a bit, even though it should.
I'm Frances Coleman. I've worked for newspapers for more than 45 years, from Texas to my native Louisiana, and finally to my home near Mobile, Alabama. I've been a reporter, an editorial writer, a columnist, and an editorial page editor. I've commented on the BBC, been a guest on the Rachel Maddow Show, and had my column distributed nationwide. If you like this podcast, please follow it. It's free. And even if you don't like it, I hope you will find it thought-provoking.